How did the Greenskins rework in Total Warhammer 3 fail, and how can we make it better? That's what this video is going to be about. Or in other words, how can we rework the rework to actually make it play as the developers intended it to, and not how it's playing right now, which is that Greenskins sort of just got massively nerfed and they can't really do the fun things that the developers wanted them to do. So Greenskins got reworked recently in Total Warhammer 3. Greenskins are a very divisive faction because under AI control, it gets enormously powerful. That is due to the War mechanic. When orcs start a War, they can get up to the units in that army in a bonus army. So I have 20 units in this army, and then we can get a War army behind it that will slowly build up over the course of my turns to another 20 units. Total Warhammer 3 is known for the higher difficulties having a lot of AI cheating. This means that the AI will frequently cheat out and get 4, 5, or even 6 armies. When all these armies war, it can become quite difficult for the players to deal with. So they got nerfed. They got nerfed really hard. Before I continue on, let me remind everybody to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on any of your thoughts here. If you agree with me or disagree with me, both are fine. I need to say that before I forget, because now I'm going to start, well, I guess, rambling on. And if you don't want to watch, by the way, you can just use this as a podcast, but let's go on. How did WAs work? Why were they so strong? Because orc technologies used to be really strong. When you are in a War army, that's this army over here, you don't get the normal buffs from the Lord. Instead, you only get buffs from technology. Because of that, orcs used to get really strong technologies that gave them massive buffs to their entire faction, so that these War armies stayed relevant into the late game. What the developers did to try to rebalance the Greenskins was they nerfed their technologies a lot. To give you an example of how much they've nerfed Greenskins, the melee attack for orc units went from 8 to 3. The bonus damage percent went from 10% to 5%. Black orcs have entirely lost their bonus armor piercing damage and now get a mere 4 melee attack, and their 4 melee attack only comes from all the way down here in the tree, which would take you, even at my turn, 20 more turns to get into, instead of getting it earlier in the tree. And goblins have received very large similar nerfs. Basically, across the board, the entire faction got catastrophically nerfed in their tech tree. Now, the intent here from the developers was that, okay, the War armies are going to be substantially weaker, but in return, you will be able to mass double or even triple scrap upgrades onto your units, which will make them significantly more powerful if you actually use your scrap. Now, how do you get scrap? What is scrap? Up here, you can see scrap. You get scrap from raising cities, you get scraps from fighting battles. I mean, that's actually basically it. You can also get a tiny bit of scrap over time by getting it from these buildings over here. But the problem, and I'm going to keep talking about scrap for a lot of this video, because this is like 99% of the problem. But the problem that the developers don't seem to have realized is how much scrap costs versus how much you get. Now, in the old version, again, you could only get 1 upgrade from scrap. So once you upgraded a unit once, you were done. You can now upgrade a unit multiple times. So even though these goblin, well, I guess this goblin has padded shield, I could then also give him spiky bits. Now this seems good, right? Here's the problem. Costs increase by 30 scrap per applied upgrade. This means if I want to put 2 scrap onto a unit, it will cost 30 more in addition to the base amount. Now, I want to show you guys the upkeep per turn of a fully upgraded tier 4 Goblin Workshop is 5 scrap. You did notice that cost 80 scrap earlier, right? Just to get a mere tier 1 unit, his second scrap upgrade costs 80. That's 80 scrap. To give you an idea of how much you get from battle, it's anywhere from about 25 to 30, sometimes 40. If you completely scorch a city to the ground, you get 50, and that's 50 it's totally independent of the size of the city. It will always be 50. You really cannot generate that much scrap. In fact, over here, you can see, even though I've built as many Goblin Workshops as I can, I'm only getting 14 per turn. Now, why is scrap even in this game? What purpose does it serve? To talk about scrap, we need to talk about the Greenskin roster. Of course, this game came from the tabletop, and on the tabletop, Greenskins tended to have a lot of very cheap, harassing units. Greenskins were a spam faction. They didn't do quality units, they did quantity. Although they did have some units that were good, they had no units that were nearly as good as other factions. High elf melee units are just going to be better than greenskin melee units at the end of the day. They're just better, right? But greenskins will be able to get more of even their high-end melee units, right? So the scrap system, because this game here, Total Warhammer, you can only have 20 units in an army. You can have 40 on a battle at the same time, no matter how many WA armies you bring in. You can bring in 40 regular armies. You can only have 40 units on a battlefield at once. So the rest of the units will wait to reinforce. So 20 units in an army, 40 in total on a battle. Even if you bring in 4 armies with 80 units, you can only have 40 of them on the battle at the same time. So of course the developers came up with this system. Because greenskins just did not translate that well into the game itself, with other factions being able to put more quality on the field than they could, the scrap system was implemented. So we could take these units, which don't really translate that well into game, and we could give them scrap upgrades. So we could continue to spam goblin archers, but we could put scrap into the goblin archers to at least make them somewhat good. We could spam orc boys, but we could put scrap upgrades into these orc boys, so once again they could be somewhat good. Although black orcs won't be as good as elven high-end infantry, they might not even be as good as fully upgraded intact greatswords. Once you put scrap upgrades into black orcs, they will generally probably beat greatswords, although Empire's got a bit of power grip. They'll probably beat greatswords as long as they're not held by Franz, and they will definitely be able to match the highest end. Well, no, that's not true. They'll be able to match decently high-end units. They're clearly not going to be a match for Chaos Chosen, but at the very least, they'll be able to match some decent units, right? So the player base has always had a problem with this scrap system, and you might be thinking to yourself, well, wait, why don't you just already get the best units and then scrap upgrade the best units? Why would I bother to get orc boys if I could just get black orcs and then put scrap upgrade into black orcs? You've already said it's so hard to get scrap. You can't really generate it in any serious amount of value. So why don't you just scrap upgrade one unit, your best units, and then if you want to double upgrade that unit, why don't you just go with that? And you're understanding now the problem, aren't you? Let's look here for a second. If I want to upgrade, I already have a black orc upgraded with 5 melee attack, 20% weapon strength. This is a very good upgrade for black orcs. This will definitely allow them to match up to anywhere below Chaos Chosen, I would say. So long as they're not having to fight Chaos Chosen, they're going to do pretty good. Sharpening Stones then gives them a flat armor piercing weapon damage. This is 80 scrap to do that. With both of these upgrades, it won't be top tier, but it will be below top tier. If top tier is like S tier is like Chaos Chosen, we're not even talking about Chaos Aspiring, but Chaos Chosen, if we're talking, oh, what are those Dark Elf dudes? I think they got buffed recently. The Hargoneth Executioners. The Hargoneth Executioners are still going to be better than Black Orcs, basically no matter what you do, but you can close this gap and almost get as good as them, right? So Black Orcs, once you get these 2 scrap upgrades, they'll do really, really good. Well, okay, for those of you who are very observant, you noticed the problem real quick here, didn't you? Upgrading a regular goblin to a second upgrade is 80 scrap. Upgrading a black orc to a second upgrade is 80 scrap. So instead of ever dwelling on these lower tier units, instead of ever trying to upgrade these lower tier units, I could just very, very easily upgrade only the best units I have. For example, there's not really much point upgrading. I don't have the upgraded right now, but there's really no point going for trolls. There's really no point going for even cavalry if I could just upgrade the Arachnarok Spider, because it's a giant spider. And once I upgrade it with weapon strength, charge bonus, and missile resist, it will not die, and it will generally massively outperform any lower tier unit that I've given scrap upgrades. Now, because scrap is so limited, the system has a lot of flaws here as well. Number one, you are encouraged to save scum really hard, because over the course of a campaign, you might be able to get 2-3 armies upgraded. You might be able to get 1 army upgraded with double scrap upgrades, and that's if you're going with a lot of engineering buildings. It means that you can't really accept losses, If it takes me, and I'm on turn 53 right now, I have a scrap upgraded army here. This little symbol means scrap upgraded. I have a mostly scrap upgraded army here. The Arachnarok spiders will have to come in. And we have, this is actually an army of mostly low tier units that I've scrap upgraded to keep them relevant. So this guy died. I mean, he should have the upgrade, but he actually died earlier. So, oops. And that gets to the point. If any unit dies with scrap upgrades, that means you lose that scrap. And it is very, very, very hard to maintain your scrap. As I said, there's just basically no way to do it. In addition to that, the Greenskins have a fairly decent economy, coming in with 500 income per horde. They can't do trade, and trade is a massive source of income, so they will, contrary to popular belief, Greenskins are not a top 5 income. They're definitely not even a top 10 income, realistically speaking. I'd put them in the middle. They're not bad, but once you actually know how to do trade, and once you know how to stack trade, at this point, turn 53, 13,000 income. I am playing on legendary, so I'm obviously a bit slower, but at this point, if I was a good faction or even a bad faction that could trade with people, and I built a lot of trade goods, I'd probably have 4,000 or 5,000, probably have 5,000 from trade right now, depending on how many values I have. What I'm trying to say is that Greenskins are not a poor faction. And when we factor in, as you might have guessed, their lower quality units tend to have then lower upkeep. Even Black Orcs, the most expensive, powerful melee unit with 275 upkeep, is about, yeah, I mean, it's only a little bit cheaper than a Hargonath Executioner. It's definitely cheaper than a Blackguard of Nagaron. What I'm trying to say here is it's not that hard for Greenskins to afford armies of pure quality units. So if it's not that hard to afford these high quality armies, and the upgrades for these units are about the same price as upgrade for lower tier units, what's the point of upgrading lower tier units? But I'm going to double down here for a second. I'm going to double down here and show you something that, you know, once again, if you guys are paying attention with your eyes, you might have seen it. The second upgrade on these goblins is +3 armor piercing weapon damage. The second upgrade on Black Orcs is +5 armor piercing damage. Huh. Now, you can make lots of arguments that goblins are smaller. More goblins will be in range of the enemy. More goblins will maybe be using that +3 damage. But we can also see here, the best blades is +5 melee attack, 20% weapon strength. For those of you, 5 melee attack can often be 10 to 15% more damage. So we're looking at like 10 to 15% more damage, then another 20% damage. Lower tier melee units that have that same upgrade, like Orc Big Guns, merely get 15% weapon strength. So no matter how you look at it, higher tier units tend to get better upgrades and for practically the same price as lower tier units. So actually, double scrap upgrading your units does not encourage you to use low tier units because their upgrades just simply aren't as good. And when you factor in the fact that there's this very unneeded modifier that its cost increases, this means that there's almost no reason to ever double upgrade an early game unit. It would take me to double upgrade a goblin. I mean, you saw 30 and then 80. That's 110 scrap to upgrade a goblin twice. For 110 scrap, I could get Black Orcs. I could get Black Orcs, 2 Black Orcs upgraded with their first upgrade. In fact, do I have unupgraded Black Orcs? I do right here. So yeah, for 110, that's 2 Black Orcs. I could get 2 Black Orcs. Can we highlight this? Okay, yes, 110. I've selected 2 of them. It'll be 110 to get the best blades. Now these Black Orcs will easily chew through 6 squads of goblins, and that's just off the top of my head. So you can see the cost benefit analysis is very much not in the favor of the goblins. So what do I recommend then? Okay, number 1, and I don't know why the developers haven't done this. What we really need to do is decrease the scrap cost of basically every single low tier unit. Anything below a Black Orc needs to have its scrap cost reduced. Now, right now, I think they're 30. Can I actually show one. Let me try to recruit a regiment of renown of like a low tier unit real quick. So here's just a wolf rider. The wolf rider is super low tier unit, right? Yeah, you can see 35 for scrap saddles. I think basically every low tier unit should have their scrap costs reduced to like 25. Even 20 would be a bit more reasonable. Second thing I would recommend to the developers, because the technology's been so nerfed, and now because greenskins are balanced on getting 2 scrap upgrades on a unit, personal opinion, I think that the increasing scrap cost should just be straight removed. It shouldn't cost 30 more. That way I could actually get these lower tier units. Imagine this was 25 and imagine this was 25. If I could get a Forest Goblin Spider Rider upgraded for a mere 50 scrap, that would start to look more comparable to a Black Orc who could get his the best blade for 55 scrap. It would look a lot more reasonable, right? In addition, because Orc technologies have been nerfed so much, as you can see here, 4 melee attack for Black Orc. If I look at some of my Black Orcs, I don't think I actually have any super vet ones. I have a vet 6 Black Orc here. Even if I got this guy his the best blade, even if I got him sharpening stones, if I got him both of these upgrades, you would see him come out to 58 melee attack, 41 defense. In a world where Chaos Chosen can get to 90 melee defense, this is really not that scary. Even if I got him to vet 9 and I got him the technology upgrade, we're talking maybe 65 melee attack. This is to say, orcs are clearly now balanced, fortunately or unfortunately, on double scrapping their units. They remove so much from their tech tree on the assumption that the player would double scrap upgrade their units, and that's simply not possible. There's just not enough scrap. If I could try to take a battle here, is he standing still? Yeah, okay. So here is a dude standing forward. Let's go wipe out 2 different armies. I'm gonna wipe out 2 different armies and use 2 of my armies. I believe this should work, unless I'm going crazy. I should win this auto-resolve based on my spitballing. Okay, so, and by the way, you can see here that if I did this auto-resolve, I would lose 4 scrapped units. So you can see the AI needs cheats for scrap, and I actually want to talk about that for a second. The AI cheats for scrap really hard, and that's fine, but players also need to consider that the AI can cheat out scrap because it's losing units constantly. It would have to, otherwise it would never have any scrap. Players can't do that. So when you look at the AI and you're fighting the Greenskin AI, and you might have the opinion that, oh man, the AI is spamming so many scrap units. Why don't you just do it? Because I can't. I don't have the AI's cheats for scrap. But let's take this battle, and we're going to win a battle against 2 20 stacks using 2 of my armies. How much scrap do I generate? 75. So by winning this very large battle, I've gotten enough to upgrade. Let's actually look here. That would be enough to upgrade 2/3 of a goblin.
That's right.
The 30 originally, and then the 80 here, that'd be 110. So I would have gotten enough for about, I'll say 3/5 of a goblin. That's not a lot. And with scrap being capped as to how much you can generate on cities, and with scrap being capped as to how much you can generate in battles, I mean, seemingly, I haven't really ever gotten above 100. It seems to be based on how many lords you're using as well, which is a bit screwy, I'll say. I don't really like having to bring in 2, 3, 4 lords into each battle, because each lord is generating his own scrap. That's a bit frustrating, and it's not really an entirely fun mechanic that just having a blank lord with no army behind you makes you generate more scrap. Like, it's But okay, let's talk about something then that is also frustrating. The scrap upgrades for your legendary lords are bad. Really bad. I think there's only 2 legendary lords in the game right now who you would actually want to get their scrap upgrades. Each legendary lord gets their own scrap upgrades. Unique scrap upgrade. Big Banner Boys. Well, now hold on here. How good is Big Banner Boys? You know I'm about to say it's terrible because it's really bad. Can I actually? There is no regiment of renowned Greenskin. Are you kidding me? Do I have any of them around? Wait, I think Oh, wait, no. I know I can get it for you. So let's look at Big Banner Boys. This is the unique scrap upgrade for Gorbad. So it should be cool, right? It should be powerful. Azog's is really powerful. Warzog's is outrageously powerful. Grimgor's, if you're swimming in unlimited scrap late game, I guess you could go, and that's about it. Skarsnik's is okay. Not really. I mean, it's a lot of scrap to not get much, but with increased by 30 scrap per upgrade, so this would be 50 plus another 60 if I got this one and this one. And these ones are both better, so I assure you, this would be 110 scrap by the end of it. Now, what does Big Banner Boys do? Did the devs pay a lot of attention to making it good? No. No, it's so pathetically underpowered. I think the only people who ever got this are people who accidentally clicked on it. Per battle, so it doesn't reset after battle, but per battle, if you get up to 200 kills in that battle, so the battle is basically over, like it's done, he can upgrade early game units, orc big guns and orc boys, so not actually late game units, early game units. So imagine trying to get 200 kills with an early game unit. Not really possible. Even if you double upgraded this early game unit, it would be about equal. I would argue he would be like equal to like an advanced, I don't even know, Longbeard? He's certainly not a hammer at any rate. A hammer would trash him. But after 200 kills, you get 10 melee attack and 10% damage. Now look, I'm not saying that's useless, but compare for a second an upgrade that at the end of a battle might give you something like 30, 40, 30% damage after you've killed 200 people to 15% damage now, permanently. So triple scrap upgrading your legendary lord's special units is really not that appealing because it's so bad and it's just so very expensive. So I don't think the devs spent a lot of time making sure each legendary lord had like a really appealing scrap upgrade. Personal opinion, Big Banner Boys, if it's gonna be like this, could they just make it like a base upgrade? And that's something I do want to talk about here in a second. Big Banner Boys should literally just be a base upgrade. It should just be melee attack and damage. It should just be like how Black Orcs are. And in fact, in my opinion, all these upgrades for early game units should be just as good as Black Orcs are. Because if I'm putting scrap into beta blades, then it should be 5 melee attack and 20% damage, just like it is on Black Orcs. Because it's the same upgrade. Why is it not as good as Black Orcs? Now, Black Orcs are obviously going to be more expensive, but I'm upgrading a unit that will never get outscaled, that will just be better. And like, if I'm upgrading a unit by 20% damage, and I'm upgrading another unit by 20% damage, they're both going up by 20%. It's the same 20%. Now you could say, well, the lower tier one is cheaper, right? Because 20% of a lower tier's unit's damage is lower. 20% of a Black Orc's damage is way higher. I mean, I'm hoping we understand how math works here, right? Like if I upgrade to best blades, we're getting 10 more damage. If I upgrade beta blades, we're getting 6 damage. Surely you understand a little bit of the issue here then, right? Okay. Second up, let's talk about something that is very, I don't know, second up? Let's just talk about something that's kind of annoying the crap out of me. Now I know how auto-resolve works, and abilities like Padded Shield tend to not affect auto-resolve. Why was this not just made base stat buffs? It should have just been Missile Block Chance 30, Armor 15. Now, how do I know it could have just been made like that? Because that's literally how it is on the Black Orc Big Gun. Missile Block Chance and Armor. Do you see the problem here? This should just have been a base buff, because then it would affect auto-resolve. Now, maybe hypothetically the devs did code it perfectly to affect auto-resolve, but I doubt it because they almost never do. To my knowledge, I think Frenzy still doesn't affect auto-resolve. So, bit frustrating, that one. Third, I think every unit needs to be sure that it can actually get 2 upgrades. Now, with Padded Shields, if this was a base stat buff, it had a base stat buff to Padded Shields and a base stat buff to Spiky Bits, I think, personal opinion, Goblin Spearmen might actually be worth keeping around. Not forever, but I'm saying like you double scrap them, and if it was cheap enough to double scrap them, then you could actually see Greenskins using low tier units and not just sprinting up to their highest tier Black Orcs and monsters. Now, I'm going to show you guys one thing so you guys can maybe understand why this system can be a bit frustrating. This system has been copied into other factions. And the way it was copied into other factions is the old way, where you can only get one singular upgrade. But the way it works in other factions is actually less annoying than the exact way it works for Greenskins. Because whereas Greenskins need to manage his scrap, and they will inevitably only save their scrap for later in the game because they don't get enough scrap and they can only use it for higher tier units, incoming Wood Elves. Now, what do Wood Elves do? They can only get one upgrade, but what resource do you think they use to get that upgrade? It's going to be really obvious. It's money. They just use money. They don't need to manage a resource. They don't need to save up for late game. And I'm saying this because it's taking forever to load for some reason. They can just start the game, buy a unit, buy a Dryad, upgrade it. Ta-da! They can just start the game, get a Treekin. They can do whatever. If I have a Dryad right here, I can just go, okay, I'll just, there, Aspect of Root. Or Aspect of Oak. Or Aspect of Willow. And this makes my life so much easier, because not only can I swap it on the fly, but here you can see it's a mere 150 gold. That's nothing. So if I wanted to turn this unit into a much faster damage dealer, oh my god, I never noticed how good this upgrade is. I could just go ahead and grab this one. Ta-da! I'll put it on this one too. Ta-da, 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 that's two. So surely you understand my frustration that orcs need to spend their entire game amassing scrap just to get a Black Orc double upgraded, just to compensate for the nerfs to their tech tree. And I'm gonna be real with you, I don't think orcs have even kept up with power creep. Now, did orcs need to be nerfed? Was that something that the devs needed to do? In my opinion, well, no, actually. And this is why it's divisive. Some people come to the conclusion where they say, of course they do. And everyone says, well, yeah, we all agree. No, they didn't. Orcs haven't been overpowered since about Total Warhammer 2. They were definitely very good when played well, and they could definitely expand very, very quickly, but they've always had a cap as to how strong they can get. As the AI gets better and better and better at buying high-tier units and building higher-tier units, playing orcs can actually become a little bit irritating. When the dwarves roll out 4 thunder barges at you, or the Empire rolls out 10 land ships at you, or when you have to fight Chaos Chosen, you simply, I do enjoy playing orcs, let me be clear, this is one of the most fun factions in the game, but it can just become really irritating that in order to scale into late game, I need to be putting so much work and so much effort into min-maxing my scrap, into doing all, and I don't, in this campaign, I just didn't bother. I didn't want to run around extra lords just to get more scrap. It seemed boring, irritating, not really that fun. It's a weird mechanic and it definitely should be removed. You should get the scrap from the battle based on the battle. Having extra lords on your side shouldn't add more scrap. That's stupid. I don't think anybody actually enjoys that. It's not, it's just tedious micro. It's like Bretonia when they have to follow around every lord with 3 extra lords to get their vows done. Like, nobody enjoys doing that. Nobody enjoys running around with 4 extra lords following your lords as you expand, so you can actually generate a reasonable amount of scrap. And reasonable would still be too little. Even if I was up 1,000 extra scrap right now, I could merely upgrade, let's look right here. If I was up 1,000 scrap, I could upgrade these Black Orcs, and I could upgrade, well, really simply with 1,000 scrap, I could upgrade this army. But you do see here that there are a lot of scrap upgrades, and a lot of them are actually quite cool, and a lot of them are quite interesting. So, for example, let me show you these units, these Goblin Forest Spider Riders here. These guys are weak, useless. They were designed for the tabletop to be a very, very cheap, crappy, light cavalry that would ram in and knock people into melee. Not as bad as the Wolf Riders, but you get the idea, right? The Wolf Riders are the even cheaper, shittier version of them. Here's Wolf Riders. So you can understand here then that these spider riders just don't translate well into the game. Now, how could I get enough upgrades and how could I actually get them to be relevant? So if we look at these Forest Goblin Spider Rider archers, I could get 3 upgrades for them. In addition to the base upgrade of 30, that means it would take 225 scrap, 225 scrap to fully upgrade a Goblin Spider Rider archer. That is more than a Black Orc. Which is to say that's a lot. In fact, if I wanted to fully upgrade a, oh boy. If I wanted to fully upgrade a Orc Boar Boy Big Gun from, you can see 80 here. If I wanted to fully upgrade an Orc Boar Boy Big Gun with all 4 upgrades to finally make them good, because they are catastrophically underpowered, but if I wanted to get the bonuses large, the charge, the armor, the speed, the big banner boy from Gorbad, the armor, the missile block chance, I mean, if you comboed all this stuff, we would get a unit with a good 125 armor, a good shield. It would still be catastrophically underpowered because it has a base melee attack of 22. But you get my idea, right? Just to do all that, this would cost, what is that, like 900 scrap? And I'm just saying, listen to me, please. Let's do the following changes. So let's stop just rambling on here and let's do the following changes, okay? Number 1, I do believe the orc economy should be nerfed even a little bit further. I think the income from your buildings should go down from 250 to 500 to just 200 to 400. And in return, I believe that these buildings should give a scrap income of, it should be actually a really high amount. Taking and holding land as orcs should allow you to get more scrap income, and you shouldn't be so obligated to cheese out battles by throwing in extra lords. I think you should get 20, 30, 40 extra scrap per turn off this, although maybe that's a little bit much, so maybe let's do like 20, 25, 30. In addition to that, I believe that the scrap income shouldn't be too based on the Goblin Workshop, but this scrap income should be tripled. It should be actually 5 here, 10 here, and 15 here. That would be much more reasonable. And I'm not saying these numbers are great, but you get the general idea, right? Like, I think that would be it. That would allow you to actually get enough scrap. And maybe with the other changes, you wouldn't need to go that hard. Maybe this one would only need to be 10, 15, 20. But you get my general gist, right? Then the upkeep, the additional cost from doing 2 scrap upgrades should be entirely removed. Black Orcs are literally just getting back to where they used to be in technology from doing that double upgrade. They're not getting ahead of where they were in the past. In fact, even with those upgrades, they're still below where they were in the past. So I don't think that they should be below where they were in the past and also take way more effort to get into. In addition to that, those 2 changes, so we can double upgrade units way better. I'd also like to see early game units get their costs reduced. So instead of 30, 50, I don't know why Spiky Bits is 50. It should be like 30, and then honestly, it should be like 25, 25. Now, orcs, of course, have an issue. The game was sped up a lot, and because the game was sped up by so much, if you play Greenskins, you will notice a recurring problem. Your enemies will very frequently spam very high armored units very, very quickly. And that's true for basically everyone you fight these days. If you fight against the Empire, they will very easily and quickly get to greatswords. Is that 95 armor now? Oh my god. If you get to dwarves, they will be spamming hammers. In this campaign, by turn 20, I had to fight a hammer stack. No, I'm not joking. Turn 20. So I only had 19 turns before I needed to move on to Black Orcs because all those other units were bad. I believe every melee unit needs to have an armor pen upgrade, because if I actually do intend to continue to use goblins, and maybe not goblin spearmen, but you get my idea, if I continue to intend to use these units, then surely they should get enough armor pen so they can actually dent up these higher tier units. With 3 armor pen, we'd only be looking at 10 armor pen, so we're not looking at an insane amount. But honestly, maybe they should go to +5 armor pen. If I'm actually bothering to continue to use these low tier units, then maybe they should actually scale if I dunk all my scrap in them. That was literally the original design intent. And to truly explain to you, how one-sided these scrap system currently is, I can upgrade a giant for 5 melee attack, 20% weapon strength, which is to say a lot. Okay, now I can do that, or I can get I could upgrade 2 giants, or I could get my Night Goblin Archer his second upgrade to get combat stim packs, just to get some reload time reduction. Or I could go for all 3 upgrades for 195 scrap, so 225 scrap again. I could get all 3 upgrades. Now my Night Goblins have a little bit of melee defense, reload time, and I could do all 3 upgrades to get 1 Night Goblin Archer to scale decently, or I could upgrade 4 Giants and run them in and beat the crap out of everybody, because once you get upgrades for them, they have 1.1 thousand damage. Although I think that is 1.1 thousand damage. No, I don't know the other one. So it's just 1.1 thousand damage with clubbing, with high level giants, with the red line for them, and with biggest and strongest. Now, mind you, this is not really that hard to get. Giants, especially once they have that scrap upgrade, will kill so many units. They will sprint up that veterancy tree, especially once you have these Black Orc big bosses, because Black Orc big bosses are outrageously good right now. Armed to the Teeth is really good. Boss of the Field is good. Spamming Smash 'em Harder is very effective. I would very much recommend Boss of the Field, Smash 'em Faster, pretty good one. There's also the One Orc Army, which I'm going to be real, is terrible. I don't even know why they did this one. Assault units only hits 1 unit, so that doesn't really even seem like a good idea. Now, Hero Killing Blow is another option. It's okay as well. I just like Boss of the Field, because spamming Smash 'em Faster, as you might have noticed when I was talking about those Black Orcs earlier against Chaos Chosen, Black Orcs can, if you do fully upgrade them, let me upgrade one right here so you can see it. If you do fully upgrade them, and I used all my scrap, you can see we got like 80 weapon strength here, coming out 59 armor piercing damage. We could upgrade that even further later on. Not by a lot, but like a little bit. So the only problem we have right now is 58 melee attack, which in Warhammer 2 would be a really good amount of melee attack. We wouldn't really need more. In Warhammer 3, well, if I just go look at, for example, Chaos Chosen and Nurgle, they have 51 melee defense before you even factor anything in. That's 51 melee defense base, period. If we look at their Chosen and Nurgle with a shield, it's 65 melee defense. Now, granted, these units don't have the most armor pen, but they still have 14. And if you can't hit an enemy, they will eventually win a fight. And it's not just them. It's also dwarves. Iron Breakers have 66 melee defense. And if we look at Chaos Dwarves, I'm hesitant to look. Okay, these guys only have 64. So what I'm trying to say here, okay, what I'm trying to say, and it's not, by the way, it's also other factions as well, like Grail Knights. Like I'm saying, these high-end units, 58 melee defense on a Grail Guardian, like I'm trying to say, this would have been, this number right here, 58 melee attack with 80 weapon strength, this would have been outrageous in game 2. This would have been, you know, this is about where they were in game 2. But nowadays, you're going to need to get them more melee attack. So this is totally off topic. The 2 ways to get melee attack: get an Orc Shaman, have him do his little dance. If he does his little dance on the front line, he can give 30 seconds of melee attack and 25% damage. And then if you combo that with the Black Orc Big Boss spamming Smash 'em Faster, and then you combo that with your Lord spamming Smash 'em Faster, you can actually get pretty good melee attack, and that's ignoring War. So you can get these really high damage Black Orcs to actually connect their blows, even with high-end enemies. Maybe not as much as you want, but, you know, enough times to kill them, right? You only gotta kill someone once. Anyway, where was I going with this whole statement here? I really like the rework. I mean, as you've seen, I really do like the rework. I do like that the Black Orc Big Boss has a role. I do like that the Shaman can do a dance on the front line and buff people. Those are just cool, and I think it's cool, right? I'm just saying, my problem here is that I don't feel incentivized to actually spend my scrap upgrading. You can see these big guns I've had since the very beginning of the game. I had 8 of them fully upgraded. They've been slowly whittled away. Now we have 5. I never upgraded them. I never even wanted to upgrade them because there's no point to upgrading them because I'm saving my scrap. You can see I literally do not have enough scrap to even get my Black Orcs upgraded. And it's just, okay, so that's the video. I just think the scrap system needs to properly incentivize early game units. And in particular, I think it needs to properly incentivize you to actually go for the double upgrade. Because right now, you're not incentivized to go for the double upgrade. You're incentivized to just slap one upgrade on every unit, build a new army, slap one upgrade on every unit, build a new army. And so a recurring problem is a lot of people are noticing they just don't really have any incentive to actually build these early game units because you can't double upgrade them. 65 to get the second upgrade for the armor and speed. Now 60 armor, 98 speed, maybe this Forest Goblin Spider Rider would actually be decent, right? Although he is in Snaggle's army, so he's getting big buffs from being... These are not his base stats in vanilla, right? Like I've comboed a bunch of different stats with them, right? Like Redline and all that. So I'm just saying, like, if I could get this second upgrade, this unit and this army, I would be like, okay, maybe we could work with this. But I'm not incentivized to do that because it's inting. Now you can say it's thematic, it's roleplay, it's this, it's that. You should never have a situation where the correct choice is to not have fun. The winning choice is to not do the cool thing, and the losing choice is to... Sorry, let me say it again. The losing choice is to do the cool thing, and the winning choice is to not do the cool thing. There we go. Words are hard. Because if the losing choice is to not do the cool thing, then you're not doing the cool thing. Empire gets to spam 20 steam tanks by turn 7. So I think it would be fine if Black Orcs could properly double upgrade their units and get a little bit of armor pen on the shield units. And as I wrap up this video, can I just raise one question, perhaps, to the developers? The shielded Black Orcs, why are they so underpowered? Now, maybe in multiplayer battles, they are doing way better, but 34, 42, 48. Have you guys ever looked at Black Orcs and thought to yourself for a second, they're a high armor unit with a silver shield, which is great, which is fine. But have you ever actually compared them to anything else in their tier? I mean, they're pretty comparable to literal just Marauder champions. They have the same armor piercing damage as a Marauder champion. They have very similar stats. They have 10 less melee defense. Now, they do have more armor, and they do have a silver shield, and they do have more HP, but Marauder champions also get way better buffs from technology. Also, Marauder champions are faster. Also, Norska's really underpowered, at the very least in its fun category. On campaign, it seems to do fine, but Marauder champions should not be like the unit. I don't know. It's just a complaint I have. You can upgrade, you can scrap Black Orcs. That's their whole point. So they're not bad. It's just like, why would I build a shielded unit when I could just try to get a Black Orc? Because a Black Orc gets in there, he hits things, they die. A shielded Black Orc, it's a front line. Why do I have a front line? For what? What do I need a front line for? Actual question. Can anyone tell me what I need a front line for? What, Doom Diver catapults? Now, maybe I could have a front line if my archer's skilled better. I'll grant you that. Right? I mean, let's say hypothetically. I mean, and let's talk about technology. One last thing about technology, okay? Number one, I think they need to return a lot of these buffs to technology. So, for example, better arrowheads, or maybe even night raiding. This gives 2 armor-piercing missile damage to night goblins. Personal opinion, could we maybe add some armor-piercing to the archer cavalry? The missile cavalry? Because there's a lot of units in greenskins. Goblin Wolf Chariots, Forest Goblin Spider Rider Archers, Goblin Wolf Rider Archers. They're all goblins, but you get the idea, right? Like, a lot of this roster doesn't really translate well into campaign. And I think the devs need to give this a pass to ensure that more of these units are actually buildable on campaign. I'm not saying they're not buildable, they're unbuildable. I'm just saying, like, in what world right now would I go and grab a Goblin Wolf Rider? I can barely even make Goblin Spider Riders good, and I got one of the most OP legendary heroes, giving them some of the most ridiculous buffs. I mean, 10 melee attack, 10 melee defense, 15% physical resist, 15% weapon strength. God, every spider gets his own version of the hunger. Like, that's wild, right? 20% speed for them, devastating flanker, opportunist murder. Like, you see what I'm trying to say here? And still, I can barely get these units to be viable, because by the time, I mean, here, look at what the Skaven are bringing in. Storm vermin, storm vermin, storm vermin, death runners, storm vermin, storm vermin, storm vermin, storm vermin. Like, devs, the AI doesn't bring in Empire Swordsmen anymore. It's not just bringing in Empire Swordsmen and dying to you, it's bringing in actual units these days. I think this is a Skaven slave army. I can actually tell because he's a decently high level, and I could tell he was a high level because he's got Dabel. See, if I want to play Skaven, I'll go play Skaven, right? And Skaven have cool campaign mechanics. They got the food system, they got raising high level cities, they got guns and all that. But if I'm going to play Orcs, I'm stuck with a roster of low tier units. And if I'm stuck with a roster of low tier units, I want to scrap them. I want to fight battles, I want to get the scrap. And Warriors of Chaos will upgrade their units. Marauder becomes a Chaos Warrior, becomes a Chaos Chosen, becomes an aspiring champion, right? Like, that's cool. That's their mechanic. My mechanic is I sit here with the shit goddamn goblin with a spear, and I give him all the best armor from all the scraps I find, and he becomes, I'm not saying equal to a good unit, but at least he becomes a tolerable unit. Like, that's how it's supposed to work. That's the idea. That's a power fantasy, and that's just how I want it more to play. And to do that, I'm gonna need more scrap, and to need more scrap to do that, I'm gonna need the developers to also incentivize me to actually use 80 scrap to give a shit little goblin 3 armor piercing. Anyway, I think that's gonna be it for the video. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. I just want goblins. I want greenskins to play better. And look, fundamentally, yes, if you nerfed greenskins back at the end of Warhammer 2, I'd say, like, good job. They were overpowered as shit, right? But after like 5 years of power creep, I do not think the devs needed to slam greenskins with 92 nerfs. Okay. I mean, to put it this way, like, you play most campaigns on Legendary these days, and it's just a map painting simulator. If you play Greenskins on Legendary right now, it's a horror survival simulator where stacks of hammers start chewing you down. Like, holy crap. I mean, Legendary obviously needs to be more difficult, but yeah. I like Black Orcs. I like Orc Boar Boys. Could we buff them? Because they're ass. Anyway, that's all I have to say. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.